going to be cutting a rotating dovetail joint. I cut this joint about a month ago. I didn't have any reference for uh, cutting the joint. It's pretty interesting joint. Um, and I've used it in one project so far, and that was in a chair. We're gonna start this joint with a 2-inch Forstner bit. I think I go about a 1/4 inch deep. Be mindful in your layout that when you drill from each side, of course you want to meet in the middle. We're gonna go from the 2-inch Forstner bit. We're gonna move to an 1.25 inch Forstner bit. Be careful not to blow this out on the back side. I think you can see in the next clip that I just do hit my depth. There we go. And it leaves me really nice, crisp, clean lines. This portion of the joint ends up being the seat socket, and of course it's a half circle, and the easiest way to get a half circle is to cut the full circle and then cut that circle in half. We're going to move to the lathe here, and be mindful I'm barely qualified to use one. I'm really just hogging out material for that inner diameter there. We're going to further define it on the router table with a dovetail bit. The dovetail bit here gives me the angle. It's a really nice clean line. It is the sketchiest part of cutting this joint, but if you're careful with my setup blocks, I don't cut too far in either direction, and it leaves a really nice result. I was really pleased with how this turned out. So we're gonna move from power tools to hand tools, and you really want to get this line really nice and straight on each side, because that's gonna be our show side. And so we really want a nice clean cut. Then we're going to use a series of hand planes to remove as much material as we can before we move to a flush cut saw. I don't have a shoulder plane. It probably would have come in handy here, but however you want to remove this material is fine. This just happened to be what I have, and it worked well for me. But again, however you want to do this is fine. This portion of cutting this out becomes a little more difficult when you're actually cutting it on a chair leg. You'll just have to be more careful with your saw strokes. We're going to do a little bit more hand planing before we move to chisels. At this stage, we want to make sure we're taking our time. A mistake here can cause you a pretty large headache later. So be careful with your chisel, be careful with your hand planes. We don't have to be perfect here. We're getting close. We'll have an opportunity later to further refine with sandpaper, so just don't take off more than you're comfortable with. If you're really good with your chisels, you can get really close to where you want to be, but if you're not as good with chisels, just a little bit of time is fine. And with that, we are done with this portion of the joint. We can then lay it over top of the seat socket and mark out our dovetails. The majority of the rest of this joint is kind of a rough cut. I mean, really these marking lines, we're gonna cut to those, but the rest of it isn't gonna show. So we right here in this portion, you don't have to be incredibly accurate, but those knife lines do need to be accurate, as they are what's gonna show. A little background on uh, conceptualizing this joint. About 2.5 years ago, somebody showed me what a maloof joint was, and I don't know why I had it in my head that I was curious, could I do a Maloof joint with dovetails? And the only way that I could think to do that was with something that was a true circle. And at the time, I didn't have the tooling, skills, or anything necessary to cut this joint. So for the subsequent years, I thought about this on and off. And one day on my way home from work, it just clicked, and I knew how I was going to cut this joint. I came home, I put it down on paper, went out into my garage the next day and cut the joint. And I think the first time I cut it, it took about 8 hours. It was a lot of staring, a lot of staring, but it came together in the end, and it's an incredibly strong joint. Uh, it's hard to hurt it at this point, but there you go. A rotating dovetail joint.